The first time my sisters saw me after 12 years, I was standing beneath a photograph of our dead parents and telling a ballroom full of investors that their new heart drug could kill people. Elena Mercer had one hand on the microphone. Sophie was seated beside the Minister of Health. Between them stood Owen Price, the boy they had chosen over me, smiling for the cameras as the public face of the Mercer Foundation. Then, the 40-foot screen behind the stage changed. A toxicity graph appeared. The red line climbed, and my name appeared beneath it. Dr. Julian Rowan, lead researcher, Vela Cardiac Institute. Elena went completely still. Sophie dropped her glass. Owen looked as though he had seen a ghost. 12 years earlier, my oldest sister had slapped me for frightening him. My second sister had opened the front door and told me that anyone who hated their family that much was free to leave it. So I had. They spent the first week waiting for me to return. The first month telling people I was being dramatic, and the next 12 years discovering that silence could last longer than anger. Now Elena stared at me from across the ballroom and whispered the name she had not spoken in public for more than a decade. Julian? I continued my presentation as though I had not heard her. The Mercer Foundation was told this formulation passed every independent safety review, I said. It did not. 2 trials were altered, 3 adverse reactions were removed, and the stability data presented tonight was produced before the final compound even existed. A restless murmur moved through the room. Cameras turned toward the stage. Behind Elena, the executives of Halcyon Pharmaceuticals stopped smiling. Their chief executive, Conrad Vale, leaned toward a lawyer. I noticed because I had spent 12 years preparing for the moment he became afraid. Elena finally stepped forward. Stop the broadcast. I looked directly at her. No. Her face changed. That was the first word I had spoken to her in 12 years. And it was the same word I should have learned to say much earlier. The story had begun on my 19th birthday. I woke before sunrise because I wanted to finish my parents' memorial archive before dinner. Our parents, Dr. Michael Mercer and Dr. Anna Rowan, had died in a laboratory fire when I was 13. They had been developing an affordable treatment for congenital heart failure. After their deaths, Elena abandoned medical school and took control of the family foundation. Sophie studied law and later became its legal director. I studied biomedical engineering because it was the only place where grief felt useful. The archive was my private project. I had spent 3 years recovering damaged notes, old audio files, trial records, and photographs from the computers rescued after the fire. Most of the physical notebooks had burned. The few surviving pages were curled black at the edges and smelled faintly of smoke. That morning, I finally reconstructed the final 47 seconds of my mother's last laboratory recording. Her voice was distorted, but understandable. Michael, the stabilizer is reacting with... Then came a crash. A man's voice said something in the background. The file ended. I replayed it 6 times. The voice did not belong to my father. I was trying to isolate it when Owen entered my room without knocking. He was 11, small for his age, with large, dark eyes and the permanent, careful expression of someone who knew adults loved fragile children. Julian, Elena said breakfast is ready. I'll come down. He looked at my screen. Is that Aunt Anna? He called my mother Aunt Anna because his father, Thomas Price, had worked in our parents' laboratory and died in the same fire. Elena and Sophie had found Owen in foster care 4 years earlier. They brought him home because they believed caring for Thomas's son was the last debt our family owed the dead. At first, I agreed. Owen was quiet, sickly, and terrified of being sent away again. I gave him my old room near the garden because it had more sunlight. I taught him how to swim. I stayed beside his hospital bed after his heart operation. Then he began breaking things. Never expensive things, only things connected to me. My father's fountain pen, my mother's recipe cards, the wooden model airplane Elena had helped me build when I was 7. Each time, Owen cried first. Each time, my sisters comforted him. And each time, they told me grief was making me cruel. That morning, he pointed at the restored recording. Can I hear it? No. His expression fell. I only wanted to hear Dad's voice. Your father isn't speaking in this part. How do you know? Because I remember his voice. The answer came out sharper than I intended. Owen lowered his head. Right. You remember everyone. I don't remember anybody. Guilt arrived exactly where he expected it to. I removed the headphones. I'm sorry. I'm tired. I'll make you a copy after I clean the audio. He nodded and left. At breakfast, Elena had bought a chocolate cake, even though I disliked chocolate. Owen loved it. Sophie remembered halfway through the meal that it was my birthday. She looked embarrassed, reached across the table, and squeezed my wrist. We'll celebrate properly tonight. Elena was reading messages from Halcyon Pharmaceuticals. Conrad Vale wanted the Mercer Foundation to approve a partnership using my parents' unfinished research. Elena, I said, don't sign anything with Halcyon yet. She barely looked up. We have been negotiating for 8 months. I found something in the archive. What kind of something? A voice in the lab before the fire. Someone else was there. That got Sophie's attention. Elena set down her phone. Who? I don't know yet. Owen's spoon stopped halfway to his mouth. I noticed. At the time, I thought he was frightened by the fire. Elena, I also found trial notes showing Mom rejected one of Halcyon's stabilizers. Their new proposal uses the same chemical family. Elena's patience shortened. You are a second-year student, Julian. The safety committee includes 12 specialists. And none of them have the original notes. Then send me the notes when you have something complete. Do not turn fragments into accusations. I looked at the scar on her wrist from the night she tried to enter the burning laboratory. She had been 21. For years, I believed that scar meant she would trust anything connected to our parents. I had not yet learned that grief could make people protect the wrong story. After breakfast, I went to the university. At noon, Sophie sent a message saying dinner would be delayed because Owen felt unwell. At 4, my archive access alert appeared. Someone had opened the encrypted folder from my home computer. I called Elena. No answer. I called Sophie. She rejected the call. By the time I reached the house, an ambulance was parked outside. Owen was sitting on the front steps beneath a blanket. Elena knelt beside him. Sophie stood near the door with blood on her sleeve. The moment Elena saw me, she crossed the courtyard and slapped me. My head turned with the force of it. What did you do to him? I tasted blood. What are you talking about? Owen says you locked him in your room and threatened him. I wasn't here. Sophie held up my laptop. The corner was cracked. He says he tried to stop you from destroying Thomas's files. I looked at Owen. His breathing came in short, theatrical gasps. Behind him, a paramedic prepared an oxygen mask. Then I saw my archive on the laptop screen. The folder was empty. 3 years of recovered work had been deleted. My mother's recording was gone. I walked toward him. Owen flinched so violently that Elena stepped between us. Don't come near him. He deleted the archive. He is 11. He knew the password. Sophie's face hardened. Because you gave it to him? I didn't. Owen began crying. I only wanted to hear my dad. Julian said Dad caused the fire. He said I should disappear like him. I stared at him. The lie was too precise to be childish. Elena's voice became low. Did you say Thomas caused the fire? No. Did you tell Owen he did not belong here? No. Then why would he invent this? That question told me there was no answer she would accept. I looked at Sophie. She had always been the quieter one, the one who bandaged my hands when I cut them, taking glass from the burned archive boxes. Sophie? She avoided my eyes. Give everyone space tonight. It is my birthday. The words slipped out before I could stop them. For 1 second, both sisters looked ashamed. Then Owen coughed. Their attention moved back to him. Elena placed a hand on his shoulder. We're taking him to the hospital. What about the archive? We will discuss your obsession when you are calmer. My obsession? You have spent years looking for someone to blame. There was someone in the lab. Enough. No, not enough. You are about to hand our parents' work to the company whose chemical they rejected. Elena's face went white with anger. You think being their son makes you the only person who misses them. I think it should make me someone you believe before a boy who lies every time he is afraid. Owen made a broken sound. Elena raised her hand again. This time she stopped before striking me. Sophie opened the front door. If living with us has become so unbearable, leave until you can behave like family. Rain had begun outside. I looked from one sister to the other. 4 years earlier, they had brought Owen into the house and promised there was room for all of us. Now Sophie stood beside the open door. Elena stood between me and the boy wearing my father's old cardigan. Something inside me became very quiet. All right, I said. Elena frowned. All right, what? I'll leave. She expected an argument. That was our pattern. I would shout, she would threaten, Sophie would ask everyone to calm down, Owen would cry. By morning, I would apologize for the sake of peace. But that day I walked upstairs, took the emergency suitcase from my closet, and packed only what I could carry. My passport, 3 shirts, my parents' burned notebook, the hard drive I had hidden beneath the floorboard, and the acceptance letter from the Rowan Institute for Cardiac Research in Copenhagen. I had not answered the offer because it required an immediate departure and a 12-year research commitment across several international hospitals. Professor Mira Solberg had nominated me after reading my paper on low-cost ventricular pumps. I had planned to reject it. My sisters were the only family I had left. At least, that was what I believed that morning. When I came downstairs with the suitcase, Elena laughed once in disbelief. Do not make this another performance. It isn't. Owen is going to the hospital, and you are packing a bag to punish us? I'm not punishing anyone. Sophie's voice turned cold. Then leave. But don't expect us to chase you this time. I set my house key on the entrance table. Owen watched from beneath the blanket. For the first time, he looked frightened for real. I walked into the rain. No one stopped me. At the gate, a silver sedan pulled over. Professor Mira Solberg got out holding an umbrella. She was 27, 6 years older than me, with long white blonde hair usually tied at the nape of her neck. She had come to collect the original hard drive before flying back to Denmark. When she saw my face, she stopped asking about the archive. Who hit you? It doesn't matter. It matters to me. Behind us, Elena stepped onto the porch. She saw Mira take my suitcase. Her expression became contemptuous. So that is what this is. You already found someone to support your little rebellion. Mira turned. I offered your brother a research position 6 months ago. He stayed because of you. Elena's face shifted. I grabbed Mira's arm. Please. She looked at me, understood, and opened the passenger door. Before I got inside, Owen ran into the rain. Julian! Elena immediately rushed after him. She wrapped her coat around his shoulders and pulled him back. I watched her protect him from the same rain falling on me. Then I entered the car. Mira drove away. 7 days later, my sisters left for Switzerland with Owen. The trip had originally been my birthday gift. I had wanted to visit the Cardiac Museum in Bern since I was 14. Owen posted photographs wearing my blue scarf. Elena captioned one image, "Family heals together." They still believed I was staying in a university dormitory. On the 3rd day of their trip, Sophie sent a single message. Are you done being angry? I had already surrendered my phone number. My reply never reached her. Before leaving, I signed my shares in the Mercer Foundation into an independent patient trust. I left instructions that Elena and Sophie could manage the trust, but could never sell it or transfer the money to Halcyon. I also sent a copy of the damaged laboratory recording to a federal investigator. The final thing I did was change my professional surname to Rowan. It was my mother's name. For the next 12 years, Julian Mercer disappeared. Julian Rowan worked. The Rowan Institute was not a secret bunker or a prison. I could have called home whenever I wanted. That made my silence harder to explain and easier to maintain. During the first year, every time my phone rang, part of me hoped it was Sophie. During the second, I stopped checking unknown numbers. During the third, I learned that missing someone did not require returning to them. Mira became my research partner. She was severe in the laboratory, hopeless at cooking, and incapable of pretending that cruelty was concern. When I worked 30 hours without sleeping, she turned off the power to my station. When I apologized for taking up space in her apartment during a housing delay, she handed me a lease with both our names on it. When I finally told her about my sisters, she did not call them monsters. She asked a more difficult question. Why did you need them to be evil before you allowed yourself to leave? I had no answer. Our research moved from pumps to tissue-compatible stabilizers. My parents' original goal had been to make heart treatment affordable. I carried that goal without using their surname. By 27, I had developed the first version of Vela, a compound that reduced the cost of a major heart failure therapy by 80%. By 30, the clinical results were strong enough to frighten Halcyon Pharmaceuticals. That was when Conrad Vale found me. His first message contained only one sentence. Your sisters still think you left because of a child. I read it twice, then deleted it. His second message contained a photograph of the Mercer laboratory fire, taken from outside the building. The timestamp was 11 minutes before emergency services received the first call. In the corner of the image stood Thomas Price, Owen's father, alive, looking directly toward the camera. I did not delete that one. Back home, Elena and Sophie's certainty had begun cracking much earlier. When they returned from Switzerland, my room was empty. At first, Elena was furious. She called my university and learned I had withdrawn. Sophie checked my bank account and discovered it had been closed. Then the family lawyer arrived with the patient trust documents. Elena read my signature 3 times. He gave away his inheritance? The lawyer corrected her. He protected it. The trust still funds cardiac patients. Neither you nor Halcyon can use the shares as collateral. Sophie asked where I had gone. The lawyer said he did not know. That was true. Mira had arranged the fellowship through the institute directly. Owen stood in the hallway listening. Inside his pocket was a memory card he had removed from my laptop before deleting the archive. He had expected me to return and bargain for it. He had not expected me to vanish. For 12 years, he kept it. That choice would eventually destroy all of them. Elena searched for me for the first 6 months. Then Halcyon offered the foundation a partnership, promising to finish our parents' medicine. Conrad told her that grief had made me unstable. He showed her emails suggesting I had sold research overseas. The emails were forged. She believed them because they matched the brother she had decided I was. Sophie had doubts. She buried them because admitting them would mean admitting what they had done. The Halcyon partnership grew. The Mercer Foundation became famous. Owen became its youngest ambassador, speaking publicly about surviving heart disease and honoring the scientists who had saved him. He was charming. He was grateful. He never mentioned that he had deleted their son's final recording. Then, 12 years after I left, Halcyon announced Oraline, a low-cost cardiac drug based on research recovered from the Mercer laboratory. The formula included the same unstable compound my mother had rejected. Conrad scheduled the launch for the anniversary of the fire. That insult was deliberate. I returned home 3 days before the gala, not to see my sisters, to stop the drug. Mira came with me. By then, she was no longer simply my research partner. We had married quietly 2 years earlier in Copenhagen with 6 colleagues, 1 terrible cake, and no empty seats reserved for relatives who might not come. At the airport, she looked at the city skyline. Do you regret coming back? I haven't entered the city yet. You started regretting it over the ocean. I glanced at her. She took my hand. You don't have to forgive anyone to tell the truth. That evening, Sophie saw me first. She was leaving the Halcyon headquarters when I crossed the street toward the regulatory office. A car nearly hit her because she stopped in the road. "Julian?" I kept walking. She ran after me. Her heels struck the pavement behind me. "Julian, wait!" I entered the government building. Security blocked her because she had no appointment. Through the glass, she watched Mira take the evidence case from my hand. Sophie's gaze moved to our wedding rings. Her face collapsed in a way I had imagined many times during my first years away. The reality gave me no satisfaction. At the gala, Elena saw me beneath our parents' photograph. That was where this story began. After I refused to stop the broadcast, Conrad Vale stepped onto the stage. "This man has an obvious personal grievance against the Mercer family." I changed the screen again. My mother's restored laboratory notes appeared. These were authenticated by 3 independent institutions. Conrad smiled. "Stolen notes. Then explain why Halcyon filed a private patent using the same rejected stabilizer 4 months before the fire." The room erupted. Elena turned toward him. "You told us the stabilizer was developed after the fire." Conrad's expression remained smooth. Old research often overlaps. Mira activated the audio. My mother's voice filled the ballroom. "Michael, the stabilizer is reacting with the oxygen seal. If Vale insists on rushing this, people will die." Then came the crash. The unknown man spoke. This time the voice was clear. "Take the Rowan files. Leave the price samples." Conrad did not move. But Owen did. His chair scraped backward. I looked at him. He looked 30 years old now, polished and handsome in a foundation tuxedo. Yet in that moment, I saw the frightened 11-year-old from my bedroom.
"You recognize the voice," I said.
Owen shook his head. "No."
"You have the original memory card."
Elena turned toward him. "What memory card?" His face drained. Sophie whispered, "Owen?" For 12 years, he had lived as their innocent replacement brother. One sentence began pulling the entire structure apart. He ran. Mira had already alerted investigators. They stopped him at the exit. Inside his wallet, they found a bank key. Inside the corresponding deposit box, they later found my memory card, Thomas Price's employment records, and letters written by Conrad to Owen's foster guardian. The letters did not prove Owen planned the fire. He had been a child. They proved something more complicated. Conrad had paid the guardian to place Owen with my family. Not because Owen was an imposter. He really was Thomas Price's son. Conrad knew my sister's guilt would make them accept him. He also knew that a sick child inside the Mercer home could redirect their attention, influence the foundation, and report anything connected to the fire. Owen had been trained to fear me. Then he discovered that fear could become power. At first, he broke my belongings because his guardian told him to find documents. Later, he did it because every broken object proved my sisters would choose him. The lie on my birthday had been his own. Elena listened to the investigators explain this in a private room after the gala. Then she walked to where I stood. Her posture was straight, but her hands shook. "Why didn't you tell us about the fellowship?" "I tried to tell you about the recording. You slapped me." Her eyes closed. Sophie began crying quietly. "We thought you would come back." "I know." "How?" "Your first message asked whether I was done being angry." Sophie looked as though I had struck her. Elena took one step closer. "We were wrong." "That is true." "We can fix this." "No." The word came easily now. Her voice broke. "You came back." "I came back for the drug." "We are your sisters." "You were my sisters when I was 19. The silence afterward was not dramatic. No one collapsed, no music played. It was simply the first time they had nowhere to hide from the order of events. Elena had slapped me. Sophie had opened the door. I had left. 12 years had passed. Regret could explain what happened next. It could not reverse what happened first.
Conrad was arrested that night for evidence tampering, fraud, and conspiracy related to the laboratory fire. But he had prepared one final move. Halcyon remotely triggered a failure in the cold storage facility holding the Vela trial samples. If the samples were destroyed, the approval process would be delayed for years. Mira and I reached the facility before the fire department. Smoke had already filled the lower corridor. A technician was trapped behind a sealed door. The building alarm repeated an evacuation order. I saw flames through the glass and remembered my parents. For 12 years, I believed returning would mean confronting the person responsible for their deaths. Instead, the real test was whether I would repeat their mistake and run toward a burning laboratory alone. I moved toward the door. Mira grabbed my coat. "No, there's someone inside." "Then we go with the fire team." "There isn't time." Elena appeared behind us, wearing a respirator. She had followed the emergency alert from the Foundation network. She held out a second mask. "I know the old Halcyon access system." I stared at her. 12 years ago, she had stood between me and Owen. Now she stood beside a burning door. "This does not change anything," I said. "I know." That answer made me accept the mask. The three of us entered with the emergency team. Elena unlocked the service passage. Mira located the technician's signal. I shut down the oxygen feed before the fire reached the sample vault. We brought the technician out alive. Half the trial material survived. Outside, Elena collapsed onto the pavement, coughing. I gave her water. She looked at the bottle in my hand as though it were forgiveness. "It is water," I said. A painful smile crossed her face. "I know." The investigation lasted 4 months. Sophie resigned from the Mercer Foundation and testified that she had ignored discrepancies in Halcyon's records because she feared losing the partnership. Elena publicly admitted that the foundation had used our parents' name without verifying the recovered research. Owen accepted a plea agreement for obstruction and evidence concealment. Before sentencing, he asked to speak with me. I almost refused. Mira said, "Refusing is a decision. Hearing him is also a decision. Neither one is forgiveness." So I went. Owen sat behind a glass divider. Without the tailored suit and foundation cameras, he looked smaller.
"I hated you," he said.
"I know.
"You had everything I wanted."
What did I have?"
"A place that was yours."
I considered that. "Then why destroy it?"
"Because I thought if they stopped loving you, they would have enough love left for me."
He looked down.
"I was 11 when I started. But I wasn't 11 when I kept lying."
That was the first honest thing he had ever given me. Why keep the memory card?
At first, leverage. Later, proof.
Proof of what?
That you weren't crazy.
His eyes filled.
I told myself I would return it when I felt safe. Then every year I waited made it harder.
I stood.
"Julian, are they going to forgive me?"
I looked at him through the glass.
"That is the wrong question.
What is the right one?"
"Whether you can become someone who no longer needs forgiveness to avoid responsibility."
I left before he answered.
The regulatory agency rejected Oraline. 6 months later, Vela received approval under an open license agreement that capped its price internationally. At the press conference, reporters asked whether the drug fulfilled my parents' legacy. I said no. Dead people should not be forced to approve every choice their children make. Vela was our work. Mine. Mira's. The technicians who stayed through failed trials. The patients who accepted risk so strangers could live. My parents gave me the reason to begin. They did not own the ending. Elena and Sophie attended the press conference from the back row. They did not approach me afterward. For the first time, they respected a boundary without making me enforce it. A year later, Mira and I opened a small cardiac clinic beside the research center. On opening day, a package arrived without a return address. Inside was the wooden model airplane Owen had broken when I was 15.
Elena had repaired every piece. A note lay beneath it. We know repaired is not the same as unbroken. We only wanted you to know we finally learned the difference. Mira read the note and looked at me. What will you do? I placed the airplane on a shelf in my office, not because I had forgiven them, not because I wanted to return home, because it had once belonged to a boy who deserved to remember that his sisters loved him before they forgot how. 3 months later, Elena asked whether she and Sophie could attend one of my public lectures. She did not ask for dinner. She did not ask me to call her sister. She did not say our parents would have wanted us together. She simply asked. I replied with 2 reserved seats. After the lecture, I found them waiting near the exit. Sophie held the blue scarf Owen had worn in Switzerland 12 years earlier. She extended it toward me, then stopped. This was yours. It was. I kept thinking returning things would matter. Sometimes it does. Does this? I looked at the scarf. No. She nodded and lowered her hand.
Elena's hair had begun turning gray near her temples. For years, I had imagined her aging with regret. Standing there, I understood that punishment was not the same as healing. I did not need her misery to validate mine. I have a train in 20 minutes, I said. Hope appeared in both their faces. I can walk with you to the station, Elena said carefully. I thought about the hospital room on my birthday, the open front door, the rain, the 12 years between us. Then I nodded. To the station. Nothing farther. We walked through the evening crowd without touching. Sophie asked about the clinic. Elena told me one of my former professors still complained about my handwriting. For 10 minutes, we spoke like adults who shared a past but no longer owned one another's future. At the platform, my train arrived. Elena's eyes became wet. She did not ask when I would come home. She had finally understood. Home was not a building waiting for my return. It was the place I had built after leaving theirs. Mira was waiting beside the train door with 2 coffees. She handed one to me and glanced toward my sisters. I introduced them. Elena, Sophie. This is my wife, Mira. Not my oldest sister, not my second sister, just their names. It hurt them. It was also honest. Mira greeted them politely. The departure signal sounded. I stepped onto the train. Through the window, Elena lifted one hand. Sophie stood beside her holding the useless blue scarf. I lifted my hand in return. Then the platform began moving away. 12 years earlier, my sisters chose a frightened boy because saving him allowed them to feel loyal to the dead. They did not understand that every time they protected him from the consequences of his actions, they were teaching me that blood, memories, and promises could all be replaced. I disappeared because I finally believed them. When I returned, they wanted a single villain to blame. Owen, Conrad, the fire. But families rarely break in one dramatic moment. They break through small choices repeated until someone stops asking to be chosen. My sisters could not recover the 19-year-old brother who walked into the rain. Neither could I. What we could do was stop pretending regret had the power to erase time. The train entered a tunnel. Their figures vanished from the window. Mira rested her head against my shoulder. Are you all right? I looked at the repaired wooden airplane visible through the open clinic photo on my phone. Then I looked at the woman beside me in the work waiting ahead. Yes, I said. And for the first time, the answer had nothing to do with whether my sisters believed me.